Okay, thanks for joining the session. This is all about how Donorfy speaks to Xero on the subject of bank reconciliation, and just wanted to use this opportunity to show you how it works. It's not particularly complicated, but it's quite important that the concepts are understood. And we want to make sure that you're clear about what it is to do so that you can come back and give us any feedback about how the product works and take it from there. The situation so far is that we have developed the integration. I would say it's about 95% there, a couple of bits of polishing to do. So it's usable and it works. It has been given the once over by Xero, who have a very stringent way of getting their integrations authorized, or what's the word, verified. So we've been through that process. It's been verified or certified as an app, a marketplace app by Xero, which is really good news, which means it ticks all the boxes they need it to tick. So part of that process, just to get us listed on the Xero website and therefore be a lot more visible to people who use Xero, we need to get some people using it and testing it. So be really good if really thankful that you are doing that, and we need to make sure that you're happy about what it does, so that you can put 1 or 2 reviews on the site and show that it's doing the right things for you. And with all of that done, it means we can then work with many other organizations who use Xero and have Xero's backing, as it were, as a sort of a verified app. So let's click through here. What we're going to cover today is how we connect your Donorfy to Xero, how we map what goes on in Donorfy to the accounting codes in Xero, and how we then send that information across from Donorfy to Xero, the donation information. This recording, this webinar, will be available in the Donorfy Chat Facebook group. So if you're not a member of that already, please hurry along and join. That'd be good to see you there. And you can replay these slides in this webinar if you want to there. And of course, the knowledge base articles about how it works will be published at the support site along with all the other knowledge base articles. So just a quick sort of overview of what it is and why we've built it. Obviously, organizations have an accounting system generally. Xero is the one we're talking about in this case, and a CRM system typically used by the fundraisers. And we want to integrate to that because one of the key areas of potential frustration or misunderstanding is what's in the bank versus what fundraising say they raised. And sometimes there's good reasons for those numbers being different, but this integration will help properly reconcile what has been entered into Donorfy as fundraising income with what has been received in the bank as actual money. And there are lots of things that can mean those numbers aren't ever going to be the same, because you have things like costs that go against donations, processing costs from Stripe and people like that. But we've tried to take all that into account as far as possible so that you can actually reconcile the two. And it fits neatly into Donorfy's philosophy as an integrated solution. So Donorfy is integrated with lots of other things, as you know, has an API, which is the gateway to other tools like Xero, like Just Giving and other things that we integrate with. So it fits really nicely into the kind of general product strategy that we have, of saying let's let Donorfy be the best CRM in the middle, and it will then integrate with the best tools around it. Of course, not everyone uses Xero. Some people use Sage, apparently, and QuickBooks and other tools, and it may well be that we extend the idea of what we've got here now to those tools as well, as and when they become a bit more cloud capable. Xero really probably the first and the best at being integratable with a system like Donorfy, but the others will be catching up, no doubt. So let's have a look then at the general idea of this integration, and then we'll dive into the software and show you where all the clicks are so that you can set it up. So at its simplest, someone gives some money, and two things tend to happen with that money. It gets entered into Donorfy so that you can recognize who gave that money, what it was for, you can thank them, all those kinds of things. And the money also gets paid into the bank. So this could be a check, it could be something coming in through the website, through a credit card donation, whatever it is, it ends up in two places, Donorfy and the bank. And that's fine, and that's what they're there for. But the piece in the middle is the piece that we're talking about today, which is how we reconcile those two amounts. So Xero, being the kind of integrated automated tool that it is, means that your bank can automatically be connected into your Xero so that the bank transactions can be automatically pulled in. Now, I know you can also import through CSV files into your bank transactions in Xero, but quite often it's an automated thing. So you end up with lots of records of individual pieces of money in Xero, which need to be given some kind of meaning and some kind of coding. Now, luckily, that coding has already been done by putting it into Donorfy, so you know what that money was for, which campaign it was from, which fund it was intended for, maybe which area of the country it came from, all of the kind of coding which will let you analyze that income and all the other income items will be done in Donorfy. So what we do with this integration is we push across into Xero the other half, if you like, of that transaction. So Xero has within it not only the record of the money in the bank account, but also the receive money transaction, which is a bit like an invoice in Xero. And as you know with Xero, it will then offer you the opportunity to reconcile one to the other. It'll even make a pretty good guess at which one belongs to which one. And you get that reassuring green tick in Xero to say that you're reconciled once it's been done. So that's the general idea of the integration, and it gives you hopefully the full story there of what's come into the bank versus what's gone into Donorfy. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to see that in action, and it really means the first thing that you have to do with your integration is connect it and do the mapping, the kind of the setting up part, and then we can get into the process of sending stuff across from one to the other. So I'm going to go across to Donorfy. So we're looking now in Donorfy at a great cause, a fictitious organization, and we have in Donorfy the area called settings, which you may know and love already, with lots of different things you can set up in Donorfy. But there's now a new entry in there called Xero settings. And this will be available to you, we think, from Monday. We'll be loading this up over the weekend into the live system, so you'll be able to see this. So what does the settings area look like here in Xero? Well, the first thing it looks like, and I will disconnect because I've already connected my one. What you'll see before anything else has happened with your Xero integration, it'll look like this. So you have your Xero settings, and the only option here is to connect to Xero. So this button gives you the prompt to say, okay, which Xero do you want to log into? And if you're logged in already, it will show you which companies in Xero you can log into. So I'm choosing a great cause, and I'm now allowing access. Okay, so that's the first thing that's done, is we've connected. If I go back into the Connect tab, you can always disconnect from it at any time, which will mean the integration won't work if it's disconnected. But if it is connected, it means the integration is now possible. So we've done the first step, which is connect. The next step is to set up how Donorfy talks to Xero. And that's in these other tabs here, which have now appeared as a result of connecting. So we have what we call mappings. There are default and specific mappings, and we have the bank accounts. So I'm going to click on to default mappings. And what this is saying is, if there's any item in Donorfy for which there's not a specific mapping, then these are the codes that will be applied to that item when it arrives in Xero as a received money. So these are just, if you like, the backstop. These are the defaults that will be applied if no other more specific mapping had been specified. So what we're saying here is that when money comes across from Donorfy into Xero, it's assumed it's in the HSBC business account. And this is a drop-down list of your bank accounts in Xero. You might have 2 or 3 bank accounts or even more. And then the mappings in the actual account itself. So, sorry, for the received money items themselves, which account, which sales account or revenue account is is the one that we are putting that money into. So these are your accounts in Xero, in your Xero. And then the tracking categories. If you know, in Xero you have 2 kind of customizable categories for which you can define a purpose. We have defined them in our little demo system here as the fund, what pot the money sits in, and the area, which part of the country does this money come from. So we can see here that money coming into Donorfy, from Donorfy will just go automatically into the general fund, and it's from the south, because naturally most people live in the south of the country. So that's the default there. Likewise, inventory items. Not everyone uses inventory items, but you can specify that there, and also the default tax rate. And these are all values in the drop-down list from Xero. Another one here, processing costs. So where Donorfy is capturing, like, for example, with Stripe, a £10 donation is going to cost you whatever Stripe's fees are, 1.2% plus 20p. So say that's 34p or something. That will be filed under cost of goods sold in this case. And then you might want to exclude certain payment methods from ever coming across from Donorfy into Xero. So we've got one here. We've got a payment method called pledge, which, as you might imagine, is not actually money yet. It's pledged income. So there'd be no point in bringing that across into Xero because it's not yet been, there's no money involved, nothing in the bank account to reconcile it with. So we're omitting pledges from our integration. And then lastly, when do you want all this to start from? So it might be that you've already got loads of information in Xero. You don't want it don't want Donorfy reaching back in history and pulling all the information across again and polluting your Xero with lots of things that will never need to be reconciled. So we're saying from the 1st of January 2019, that's the information, in our case here, that we want to send along. So that's the default mappings. Then we come on to bank accounts. So you can do mappings of bank accounts specifically from Donorfy to Xero. So let's say in Donorfy you had been bringing money into a standing order account for standing orders and into a general account for checks and other things. Then you can say in Donorfy that where we have used what we've called the main check account in this particular organization's Donorfy setup, these are the Donorfy bank accounts, where we've used that, then map it across to that bank account. And of course, you can imagine other mappings there. So there are multiple bank accounts. Sometimes you can say which ones go to which ones in Xero. And now perhaps the most detailed bit. This is where you have the specific mappings. So I've set these up already in my demo database here to say that when certain values are used in Donorfy, this is where we want them to appear in Xero. So I'm going to open one up that says when income in Donorfy is earmarked for the building fund, then the Xero entity to which we are mapping that is one of these tracking codes, which we've called fund. And the value in that tracking code is the Building Refurb 2020 Restricted Fund. So that's the name of it in Xero. This is the name of it in Donorfy. So that's that one mapping in that list of mappings. Event income, where the product in Donorfy, if you remember what the product is in Donorfy transactions, the event registration fee is going to get mapped into revenue account 201, events income in Xero. And that's a straightforward Xero account as opposed to any of the tracking codes. So you can see hopefully how the mappings build up. You can have a very detailed mapping of one to the other. But of course, if you encounter an income item in Donorfy that doesn't have a specific mapping, it will revert to those default mappings. You might then want to do whatever you want to do in Xero to journal that out or correct it, whatever the phrase is. I'm no accountant, but to correct it once it gets into Xero. So that's all the setup. We've connected, we've set up our defaults, and we've mapped our bank accounts and our specific income items and values across to Xero. Just one last word on those things. The things you can send across and map specifically are many and varied. So if I set up a new mapping, it's going to say what entity in Donorfy, so you can have any of your campaigns, any of your funds, any of your departments, payment methods, constituent types and areas and regions. These are all Donorfy pieces which can then be mapped to the various entities here in Xero. So accounts, funds. Funds and areas are those tracking codes. It's using the proper, given name for it, as opposed to tracking code 1, tracking code 2. That's what they are in my case, and tax rates. So these are, it's a very flexible and powerful mapping system, and you would need to take some time just to work through that to get that one right for your organization. So how do we actually get the information from Donorfy into your Xero system? So what you can see is I have on my tabs on my browser here. I'm in Xero. Go to this is a trial account for the corresponding business that my Donorfy is for. A Great Cause, as you can see there, is the organization name. And my dashboard isn't fully enabled because it's not actually connected to a real bank account or anything at this stage. It's just a demo account. But we can see also that in my setup, that's my chart of accounts. I've set up a bank account in there. I've set up events income as an extra revenue account compared to the one that was already in there, which is 200, which is general sales or income. So this is a real Xero system, albeit just a trial one at the moment. What we're now going to do is click the button to make Donorfy push information across to Xero. So go back into Donorfy, and you'll find, apart from that new entry in settings, you'll find a new entry under financial called Xero. So if I click on Xero, it's going to show me two tabs. One tab called Send to Xero, which is preparing for us everything that is due to be sent from Donorfy across to Xero as a received money entry. And another tab called History, which, as you might imagine, is a history of all the things it has previously sent to Xero. You have an option that you can just ask Donorfy to send everything across that has never been sent, starting from that start date. If you remember in the configuration, we had a start date in my settings of 1st of January. So if we just leave it as send all unsent, that's what it's showing us down here. If I don't want that option, I can choose a date range. So you might specifically mention a date range or specify a date range here for the amount that you want to send over today to Xero. It might be everything this month or this week or today. So you can have a date range as you wish there. If I scroll down, I'll see that in my database, going back to the 1st of January 2019, I've got 271 entries in my Donorfy system, transactions, and they will get sent across. I can click on them and open them to understand what they are. And the button to push to send them is this one, Queue Transactions for Sending. So I've just queued my transactions for sending, and that's going to take this little batch of donations here, along with everything we know about them, So campaign, product, fund, department, etc. Apply the mappings and push it into Xero. Now, naturally, with these things, there's a bit of a satellite delay that goes on while we wait for the APIs to crunch and start whirring and talk to each other. And we'll know it's actually completed by getting an email from Xero. So I'm just going to, from Donorfy. So bear with me for a moment as we wait for that to arrive. In fact, what I'll do is I'll show you one that came earlier. Share that window. It's not much to write home about. It's just an email that says send to Xero, 32 transactions, which was my last one I did, was sent to Xero OK. So hopefully that's become visible on the screen share. Now revert back to my Donorfy screen share, and we'll see that they are all there. Now, some of those, or all of those, will have created, back on our diagram, all these received money entries here in Xero. Oops, let's go back to that diagram. We'll need it again in the future. So let's have a look at what that looks like. How did I find this in the end? So what I did, we can go to history, and we can see the history of what has been sent. I'm just going to refresh my page here and go back into financial, Xero, and history. It still hasn't given me the full. This is my previous one, so it wasn't the 70 something that or 270 that I did just now. It's the 32 that I did earlier on. So this is the history of what has been sent, and we'll tidy this up. It won't say null; it will say view or expand or something. If I click on it, it will open it up, and it will say this is who it was from. So you can see that £850 from Elmo Lewis as the constituent went across there into Xero. I'm going to open his tab in Donorfy. So here's Elmo Lewis, the constituent, his timeline entry, and we can see that he did have a transaction here for £850. We can see it's coded up as donation for general fund, £800, and also a membership fee of £50. So that's going to make the receive money transaction a little more complex because it's got two line items in there. And you can have any number of line items in a Donorfy transaction. We call them allocations, but that would be line items in your receive money. What we can do now is go along and go back to my view. There's this view transaction in Xero button here, which if I open that, it's going to open Xero right onto the receive money transaction. So this is, go back to my diagram, the receive money piece that's come into Xero here from Donorfy. There will be, obviously this is all fictitious stuff, so I don't actually have £850 in a bank account to pair this up with and show you the reconciliation, but if you're a Xero user, you'll know how all that works. So we'll assume that that's done. But this is what the received money transaction looks like. So you can see it came from Donorfy, has a date on it. Any reference that was entered in the Donorfy transaction will be in the reference here in the received money entry. And we can see we had two entries there, 800 and the 50. If there was a fee that Donorfy knows about, like a Stripe processing fee or something like that, that also will be in here as an extra line item. Cost of sales, I think we put it under, didn't we? And 34 pence or whatever it would have been there as a sort of minus figure in there, so that your £850 isn't looking for 850 in the bank, it's looking for £849.66 or whatever that is. So that's why we bring across the charges as well, so that you can reconcile to the penny with your bank account. So that's how it works. You will get, every time you do that push, multiple receive money transactions to be reconciled against multiple bank transactions. Green tick. And as you know, Xero will begin to learn if some of those are regular or whatever kind, it will begin to learn what they are. And then you have the two reconciled. So that is what I wanted to show you today. Hopefully that has been useful. All the information about what it does, how it does, is on the support site. And of course, do contact us if you have any questions. And thanks for watching. So I'm going to